Good morning, my name's Andrew Westgarth. I'm a program manager on Azure App Service. I've been with the team over 3 years now, and my principal responsibility is bringing our solution to on-premise markets. So previously I've worked, well, I still do, I work on our sister product Windows Azure Pack websites, which has now entered extended support. I'm responsible for Azure App Service and Azure Functions on Azure Stack. And I also work on a product we call the Azure Functions Runtime Preview, which is a way of using the Azure Functions Runtime on-prem. So that's something else that I work on. I've been around web technologies for quite some years. I was an IIS MVP for 8 years prior to joining Microsoft. And in my previous life, I was technical architect at a large FTSE 100 company in the UK. Hopefully based on that experience and based on our use of actually running this platform as a large scale, you get the confidence in what we're actually bringing to Azure Stack, to the hybrid cloud. So let's just level set. How familiar are you all with Azure Stack in the audience? Iffy, not sure, played with it. Okay, how many of you have installed the POC? Okay. And how many of you installed App Service? How many of you deployed an app on App Service? Good, good, good. Okay, so I'll just do a quick level set. So Azure Stack is an extension of Azure, and the goal with Azure Stack is to have a very consistent hybrid platform so that you can take all of the learnings that you may gain from working with Azure first or with Azure Stack first, and then take that into the public cloud and vice versa. So be that tooling, be that methodologies, be that concepts, that they're all consistent as you traverse the boundaries. The right way to think about Azure Stack is that it is first a hybrid cloud platform, and it's not a virtualization replacement play. So if you're looking at Azure Stack as just something to lift and shift IaaS VMs to, like replace your VMware, your Hyper-V farms, that's not what it's targeted at. Yes, it may be able to do it, but that's not its primary goal. It's an integrated system with self-service IaaS and PaaS services. It's not DIY infrastructure. I know that came as a surprise to me when I found that out when we announced that. But having listened to the arguments for and against that, I can kind of see why the team behind Azure Stack has made that decision. When we run our Azure data centers, we have a very limited white list of products and components that we use, which means then we've got reliability. We've got stock on hand when we need to get a replacement. It's a very tight supply chain, and to have that same experience for you guys in the hybrid cloud is very, very critical, so that whether you use HP, Dell, Lenovo, or in future Cisco, and you have a part fail, they've got stock on hand and can replace it within whatever your SLA is with them when you negotiate that. It's really important. It's regularly updated for Azure consistency, so Azure Stack itself will update its firmware drivers and base underlying fabric on a monthly basis through an update procedure, and then the services that deploy on top will have their own update cadence as well. Initially for App Service, we're considering quarterly updates. So that you would get an update from us with new features, new capabilities every 3 months. Something you can deal with and something that's manageable. If we get to the goal, which is to update more frequently, then everybody's happy. And it's cross-platform. It's not a case of we're only giving you Windows. You can deploy pretty much any workload on top, and off you go to the races. So the Azure Stack promise is a consistent app dev platform, and that's what I'm going to show off today. It's the bringing of Azure services to your on-premise environment and have an integrated delivery experience when you work with your OEM. Now I assume majority of people in the audience are developers. So as far as you may be concerned is IT, bring it, I'll use it. But it's better to cover all of these things. So let's talk about App Service. When we consider App Service, we start with a conversation along these lines. Let's take the analogy of hosting a cloud-based application is like owning a car. We have 3 options. You have the IaaS equivalent, which is you can own the car and operate it and patch it and update and do all the mechanics and do all of the work behind it. Or you can use a SaaS option. So the equivalent in a car world is you can take a taxi. Somebody else pays for the equipment, somebody else services, somebody else runs it, but you pay a premium because it's not yours. And then finally, you can rent a car. You can take the usage of that car and hand off all the other costs to somebody else, and all the other maintenance and all of the implementation. And in the PaaS world, bringing your app to something like App Service is the equivalent of using a car rental, and basically lets you focus purely on what you want to do with your application. Add value, add capabilities, not worry about, is my host patched, is it up to date, what stacks are on it? That's not your problem. We do that for you, and then you bring it along. In the hybrid cloud world, if you get down to brass tacks, you still have an admin involved. So the Azure Stack operator will be responsible for bringing the updates on board. We will provide the software and the services, but the Azure Stack operator is understandably operating the platform that you're running on top of. So Azure App Service provides a number of capabilities. We offer fantastic scale hosting for web apps, mobile apps, API apps, and the most recent kid on the block is Azure Functions, which is our serverless offering. And we are bringing these to Azure Stack, and if you've had a look at any of the technical previews or the release candidates, you've seen that we're pretty close to the main features that we have in the public cloud. Question before I move on, because I want to level set. How many of you have used App Service in the public cloud and deployed apps or have them running? Okay. Level set, this is level 200, so I'm going to go over some of the features and the consistency between the two, so you will see how you can benefit from those skills that you already have and use them in an Azure Stack environment. If you've never seen some of the capabilities of App Service, then you're going to get a wide opening to see some of the key features that we have. But those, if you've played to an advanced level with ACEs and things like that, then you may find that this session is too low level for you. But let's go with it. So the scale of how we run App Service, and this is important that when we bring this technology to Azure Stack, it gives you the confidence that we are used to running this thing at high scale. We're used to dealing with a large amount of applications and a large amount of requests coming in. It's a supportable platform. It's something that we're running daily. We all work on a servicing rota, so we are deeply involved in the product group. So we are working with customers on a daily basis. We are growing at a very healthy rate. We regularly hit over 15 billion requests per day on the platform, and we are dealing with over 5,000 active customers. So we're growing into a very substantial business in the public cloud, and we hope that you can take the benefit of this platform into your hybrid cloud apps. Example of some of our customers and the type of workload that they're running. So Jet, a popular online platform here for purchasing and retail. They have been running on Azure App Service for quite some time. They've built a substantial business successfully using an e-commerce site that is deployed on top of us. And then for any Europeans in the room, any football fans, then we have Real Madrid's digital online experience for their fan base around the globe, and they are hosting that on top of App Service with integrations to a number of services across the platform. So the App Service features and capabilities, and this slide demonstrates what we have in Azure today. So in Azure we have capabilities such as schedule backup, AAD integration, RBAC, some of the top ones, sticky sessions, CDN support, scalable WordPress, remote debugging. All these capabilities, this is if you like, the laundry list of features that we are chipping off, bringing to Azure Stack. Some of these we can bring very easily. Some of them we need pieces in the fabric. So our capability to bring certain services will depend on features within inside Azure Stack or from partner teams. So for an example, hybrid connections uses Service Bus Relay. Today, we don't have Service Bus Relay in Azure Stack. So until that feature comes along as a capability to customers, we can't offer it because we're a resource provider that sits on top of the fabric and we need to take advantage of other services. So my request to you is if you find hybrid connections valuable, please go onto the Service Bus user voice site and tell the Service Bus team that you want Service Bus Relay on Azure Stack, because then it all helps and we all work together. And then there's other features along the lines that we also need to work with other teams to bring, and that's what we're doing as time goes on. But what I've done is I've taken that slide and immediately put in bold just some of the things that pop out that we already have in Azure Stack, in App Service on Azure Stack, and we've had for quite some time. So things like schedule backup. Your tenant workloads, your applications can be backed up on a schedule. You can take that backup and then restore either to Azure or back to Azure App Service on Azure Stack, so you can cross the clouds there. We already have the easy off feature for AAD integration, site slots, web jobs, functions, CI integration. We are working with the VS team to get a great story for TFS on-prem as well as VSTS online. So we've brought quite a bit with us already, so we're going to go and have a look at some of those in a little bit of time. The Azure Stack team have been conducting what we call a Moneyball research exercise with customers for about 18 months now, and talking to customers about common app patterns. And at the weekend, I was involved in a pre-day event where we went through with some customers what kind of questions and scenarios need to be addressed when looking to bring applications to Azure Stack as a whole, but then we drilled into, from my perspective, some of the features that you need in App Service. So there's three main types of app patterns that we found in a hybrid world when talking to customers who are looking at Azure Stack to solve some of their problems. So distributed applications where they need very low latency, they need high connectivity to their applications, and then they've got issues with data sovereignty and location. So it's all very well to think that everybody can deploy to the public cloud, but we all know that that's not strictly true. Certain industries, certain geographic locations, certain jurisdictions just cannot have data either leave their premise or leave the country. Now, even certain EU countries, in theory, they can use any data center in the EU, but then when it comes down to their individual country legislation, certain industries cannot have data leave. And in the past, their response to us when we've gone and spoken to them about moving to Azure has been, when are you building a data center in my country? And then we can solve this problem. But it would take us quite a lot of time to build a data center in every single country and everywhere in the world. And not only that, there are inherent challenges to doing so. So Azure Stack can help with this because you get a consistent application development platform. So whether you are working in the public cloud for some of your workloads or working in the private cloud for others, you can use the same skills and the same experience and the same tools to do the same development. And the other way of looking at the distribution applications is your data can stay where it is, or you can move it into an Azure Stack environment and then be ready when legislation changes to be able to migrate that workload purely into the public cloud. So there's a number of ways of thinking about application development on Azure Stack. It's some cases you will never ever leave your premise. Some cases you may in time, and that all will depend on your use case. Application modernization is one of the key things that App Service can help with. So a lot of companies get stuck in a situation where they're continually spending money on infrastructure, continually spending money on revving development environments, and having to manage that. And they've got people tied up doing this daily work where they could be more valuable actually just working on the application and adding value. With application modernization, you could take advantage of taking your existing workloads, moving them into a service like Azure App Service on Azure Stack, and then taking advantage of the capabilities of the platform which in the past would have taken you years to actually build out the infrastructure and justify the cost. So for example, most dev teams have dev, test, UAT, pre-prod, production type environments, whereas App Service can provide you with our slots. So we provide you with deployment slots. So with inside one platform, we can provide you with the capability to have multiple environments at the click of a couple of buttons or the run of a script. And we can also hook into your source control endpoints so that therefore you can have CI and CD, again, within a few clicks. Whereas in the past, you would have had to spin up multiple tasks, multiple pieces of infrastructure, gone through a lot of purchase. Now you've got an integrated solution. And once again, those skills that you build up can move backwards and forwards. And not only that, you can go out to market when you're looking for resource and look for people with Azure skills. The Azure skill set is growing rapidly. We've got more and more developers using it. It gives you more options when you're looking for recruitment. And here's another one that we will dig into when we look at an example later, is the idea of developing in Azure. So you can develop directly inside the public cloud, but for whatever reason, that application cannot be run in the public cloud. Be that the data it's trying to manipulate, be that the data it's at rest, be whatever reason that is, you can now deploy in Azure Stack using services that you take advantage of in Azure. Tooling consistency is a massive part of this. And not only tooling consistency, but service consistency. When I work with the team of developers that I work with on a daily basis, whenever we sign off a feature, the biggest check is that the way it works in Azure? Whether you're interacting with it from PowerShell, CLI, REST APIs, or whether you're working directly in the portal, does that feature operate exactly the same as it does in Azure? If it doesn't, go back, start again, and make sure that it does. We work out of the same code base. We are the same team. The same code that you will get in Azure App Service on Azure Stack is the same thing that we have running globally in every single data center. There are just slight nuances with bringing it on-prem. So that's why the feature consistency, the API level, has to be absolutely spot on, because otherwise you can't have that consistent experience. So you can today use exactly the same tools with App Service on Azure Stack as you do with Azure App Service in the public cloud. So as of update 3 of Visual Studio 2017, you now have a publish experience. So you can publish directly from within inside Visual Studio, and we'll go through this shortly, directly to your tenant subscription in Azure Stack. You can use the same Azure PowerShell to deploy applications, and you can use the Azure CLI. Quick show of hands in the audience. How many of you either are or work with non-VS devs? Okay. That's really useful to know, because we prioritize making sure that all of those work. Another question, Java devs. Okay. So in previous product, Windows Azure Pack websites, we couldn't bring Java to the on-prem world, because the version of Java that we used was the Oracle JDK. You can't distribute that. So it gets into a tricky situation. With Azure App Service, we use another version in addition to Java, to the Oracle JDK, called the Open JDK. So with this version, we have now got support for JDK apps, Java apps. So that will be another thing. And we are working in addition with the Azure Java team, so that we can bring the support for Eclipse and IntelliJ and all of those kind of things. We're not quite there yet, but that is coming, and we're working closely with those for that. We have integration with the same source control providers that you have in Azure. We have integration with VSTS. That's currently in test with that team, along with the TFS deployment tasks. We're working with them on that. The one element of that which we have not signed off yet that does work, that we think will work, is the direct in the portal, being able to hook up to VSTS with inside the tenant portal, and I'll go through that shortly, and publish directly out. In order to do that, you need to have an externally facing Azure Stack. because we have to do the OAuth token flow, and VSTS mandate that they can confirm that from an external endpoint before they sign off the integration. So that's why we haven't signed that off completely at the moment. GitHub, yep, that works, that's no problem. We'll demo that today. Local Git, Bitbucket, Dropbox, and OneDrive. If you're a large enterprise, you may be looking at that and saying, well, why is Dropbox and OneDrive important? Not every enterprise that interacts with Azure or who will interact with Azure App Service on Azure Stack will have the likes of GitHub or Git control. They may be agencies where, as far as they're concerned, is their source control is all internal. They don't want to hook it up to an external service. They just want to make your packages available up onto OneDrive or Dropbox or Rapid Dev and push them out that way. So we make that capability available, and now we're bringing that to you guys. So you get into the situation where now you have this capability to go through the full plethora of process and have a really rich pipeline. So you develop directly in whatever tool you like. You push into a code repository. You build. You can deploy to a staging slot. We'll go through staging slots in a second. You can validate that that application is deployed, the functionality works as you like, and then you can publish. So by swapping staging and production slots, we have you published and up and ready within seconds with a warm application. So, and in addition, you can deploy multiple artifacts to the cloud by using a comprehensive CI/CD pipeline with something like VSTS, and that's the same with Azure Stack. With Azure Stack, it's just another location. And then you can monitor the application and then improve, and go back through and continue on a release cycle extremely quickly. So let's dive into the actual product. I have two environments. I have one, so Azure Stack can be deployed with, backed by Azure Active Directory for your authentication mechanism. It can be deployed using local ADFS. So I've got both to show that we are consistent across both, and it's something that we, whenever we make sure that features are there for Azure Stack, we sign them both off in both environments, because this ADFS is not an identity provider that we support in the public cloud, so therefore that's new for Azure Stack, and we need to make sure that everything is absolutely spot on. So let's go and create a new web app. Oh, the environment's gone as cold as my hands. Just wait for that to spin up. Okay, so first things to call out that you'll notice is that the URLs are different. So every Azure Stack implementation will have a different endpoint, a different set of URL and regions for your deployment. So you'll see that the URLs are different. In Azure, we have the Azure website's global domain that we use, and all sites are deployed on that. In Azure Stack, you will deploy firstly to a region and then to an endpoint, the domain. So you will find that when multi-region support comes to Azure Stack, you will find that that endpoint changes, but it still doesn't prevent you from being able to use things like Traffic Manager, etc., externally to be able to route requests. We create a resource group there by default. App service plans are critical. This is a critical concept to understand. So an app service plan is effectively an allocation of resource. So it's the way, the tier that you wish to deploy your app onto. So let's go and have a look at creating a new one. Because if you've never looked at app service before, this is a very key concept, whether you're managing or whether you're developing on the platform, that you need to fully understand. So it's around the pricing tier and the capabilities that exist for you to make use of. So in this environment, I have free and shared. And free and shared run truly multi-tenant so that all the applications that you deploy are sat next to all of your applications and all of the customer next to you's applications. So it's true multi-tenant. You're in a sandbox, you're isolated, but your workloads are on the same machines as somebody else. As a consequence, you will find that you have limited capabilities because it's a low-level offering. So free there, for example, you only have the ability to have a set amount of storage, and you can only have one slot. So the main slot that you're on, you can't take advantage of things like staging slots, etc. In shared, you get the ability to use custom domains. In Azure Stack, the administrator themselves can tweak these plans. They can come up with their own plans. So therefore, that they can offer different capabilities that differentiate not only from us, but also from their competitors. But also at an organization level, you may find that you need different plans for different teams. So when new processor support comes along in Azure Stack, so you say you've got a graphics intensive app that a certain team wants to run with, we may not have those SKUs in Azure in our global service, but it's your hardware. Why shouldn't you be able to take advantage of that and bring that capability? So you will find that these things light up even further. And then if you look at the standard size instances, this is where you get multiple slots, multiple SSL, that sort of thing. And in Azure Stack, we've implemented this logic. Because your admins are responsible for making sure that the infrastructure is available, the workers are available for you to deploy onto, we need a way of telling you as a tenant, as a user, that there are no resources available for you to deploy onto. When you move into a standard instance size, that's a reservation of instances. So if you come along in Azure today and you say, right, I want a small an S1 instance, we reserve you one S1 worker that only your workloads get deployed onto. And that's the same thing in Azure Stack. So that is a dedicated worker. We have two modes, shared, which is true multi-tenant, and standard, which dedicated, which is truly single tenant. Only your workloads ever sit on those. And your app service plan governs how far you can scale out or you can scale in. And that's exactly the same in Azure Stack. It's a separate issue why there's none ready, because there should be two. We'll deal with that in a second. So I'm going to go and choose one that I previously created. I'm just going to use my Orlando free. It's also the method of billing. So when we bill a user, we bill based on their usage of an app service plan. So how many hours that app service plan is active. If you are using the dedicated SKU, even if no applications are deployed in that app service plan, then we still meter. But because it's a dedicated instance to you, you can deploy as many applications as you want inside that single app service plan. So it's up to you to take full advantage of that plan, but at some point you will exhaust the resources if you put too much onto that box. Realized I made a typo, but there we go. So we have the familiar experience that we have in Azure in our tenant portal, our user portal, and this directly comes from the same team, the same code that we deploy into Azure. We ship slightly behind public cloud, and there is a reason for that. When we bring new features on the public cloud, we take the pain. So if something launches and we have an issue, we can roll out fixes and deal with it and deal with customers on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, 24/7. And what we don't want to do is give you the situation where we deploy something and it doesn't work out as best as we intended, but then you're on the phone to us, plus then we've got half the world on the phone to us telling us the same thing. We don't want to bring that to you. So what we do is we bring features on board, we make sure that they are solid, we make sure that we're hitting all of our SLAs, and then we bring those down to Azure Stack. So therefore, when you get something, it's battle tested, it's run, customers have been using it in the public cloud for a while, and we know that when it comes down to Azure Stack, fingers crossed, and with all will in the world, you guys are not ringing us with support cases because of something that we released. Case in point, I already had the question, when are Linux app containers coming to App Service on Azure Stack? It will take us some time to get there. It will come, but it will take us some time because we need to make sure that service is rock solid in Azure, and then we will bring it to you guys. So, you know, there's a commitment there to bring new features, but we need to have a bit of time in between. So to give you a quick run through of our experience, so we have monitoring directly within inside the portal. I've had no requests on this site yet. We're going to do that in a short while. And I'll get the monitoring information for that site. You may have noticed when I did the create of the app, that App Insights was grayed out. So in Azure, we give you the ability to immediately plug in Application Insights. Application Insights as a resource provider doesn't exist in Azure Stack. That said, there's no reason for you not to use it, but we can't wire up the ARM resources within inside Azure Stack because they are not there. And we don't have a way today of being able to set those up in an Azure subscription at the same time as doing something in Azure Stack. You can use Application Insights, and I encourage you to do so, if that's within inside the realms of your application. Some customers, even in public Azure, will not use it because it's only deployed into certain data centers. And again, we get into data sovereignty. I've worked on a project to instrument and log applications globally with multiple teams, multiple type of applications, multiple data sources, and sanitizing log output is a very, very challenging job, so it can't always be done. If you wish to deploy an application on App Service on Azure Stack, you can do the manual integration of Application Insights and set it all up. You can set up your resources in Azure, bring down your application, your key IDs, etc., deploy those with the application, and you're going to have no problem. As long as the app data can get out from within inside your network out to the cloud, then you can do the instrumentation. The slight rub is you're going to be looking in one portal at your App Insights data, and then you're going to be looking at another portal at your application. It's technically possible. There's just reasons why we can't do an integrated solution at the moment. So we have, within inside the application, we have the ability to stop, restart. We can get publishing profiles, so we can do an import into Visual Studio that way. We can use those publishing profiles to do MS deploy tasks in VS, VSTS, etc. You'll see here we have the ability to set deployment credentials. So by default, we give you the ability to use FTP. Not everybody uses it these days, but it's still there and it's a common denominator. If you bring it right down to the base level, that's probably the quickest way that most people deploy an application. You would go into deployment credentials and set a credential, and then you can go off and use those endpoints. One of the limitations that we had in the technical previews was your admin needed to do a little bit more work to enable FTP. That is now resolved in the forthcoming release, so it's all automatic. We take care of that for you. Let's, I just need to dip into the admin for a second. That's why they're not ready. Okay. Right. I need to switch environment. I apologize for this. I need to be honest, the reason why I've switched environments, I need to have a standard instance. to be able to do deployment slots because it's a premium feature. If your admins, because you'll be running this in your enterprise or in as your service provider, you can come up with your own rules on what level of SKU gets deployment slots. In theory, you could do deployment slots in shared, and that's up to you. It's a premium feature, but you're running the service, right? It's up to you. It's your infrastructure. But what I need to do here is in my AAD environment, for some reason, my workers haven't scaled out, so I'm hoping that they have in my ADFS environment so that I can actually show you this feature. Otherwise, I have another environment which I can try, which I know has got scaled workers. But, I'd like to show you on this one. That one's in even worse state, which is making me really confident about my next session, which is directly after this one. Okay. Yes, my password is that long. It's secure, right? That's all that matters. So let's MST and I know this has got scaled out workers because this is a machine that we used on Sunday and was used yesterday and was used the day before. So I'm sure as I got called early the other morning, I would have got called if this one didn't work. So let's go and have a look. And what you'll immediately notice about this environment is I'm now logging in with my domain credentials. I'm using, this is an ADFS backed domain, so I'm using my domain credentials to log into the tenant portal, and this implementation of Azure Stack is then being federated with the Active Directory of Fabricam. So therefore, we're now into something that you just can't do in public cloud today. So here we go, let's go and create this web app and do it very quickly. Here we go. Demo fail. And let's use a new plan. Should have lots here. I scaled this one out pretty wide. Yeah, let's go and use the big one. Let's go and use S3. So this actually does demonstrate what I was talking about earlier. In this instance, the medium tier, all of those instances have been allocated to other workloads, to other ASPs. So that therefore shows up to me as a tenant that I need to get onto my admin or to the service provider to say, well, I'm trying to buy this, but I can't because it's telling me you don't have any resource. So off they go, and then they span it out. But there we go. Okay, let's choose that. We're not going to do App Insights. App Service ready for it, and there we go, deployed. And I'm going to go into deployment slots, and I'm going to add a slot. Let's call this one staging. And you have the option in our deployment slots. We can take the configuration that you have deployed for your existing application, we can migrate that across, or we can leave you to start vanilla. It's up to you which you want to start with. I'm just going to take it across. There's nothing in there that's of real criticality in this instance, but that's important. Oh, no, don't. So what that's doing in the background is we're deploying effectively another site. So we deploy another copy of that application instance, and you get a new URL, you get a new endpoint to publish to, and please don't die on me. And then in the back, that enables you to have another endpoint to test, another endpoint to share with your users, another endpoint to do your validation work on, and yeah, that's. I'll come back to that. I'm not going to have you sitting here watching my screen just die on me. So let's see if it's come back to life now. No. Okay. But what we can do now we have that in place is I've gone back. This is my original machine that I was working on too. I don't have slots in this instance, but I still have the ability to be able to deploy directly from source control. And this is something that I'm going to show again now. So by default out of the box, you will find that if you deploy App Service onto the Azure Stack POC or to a production environment, you will find that most of these are grayed out. If you go as a tenant and try and deploy an application to OneDrive, GitHub, Bitbucket, or Dropbox, the reason you will find they are grayed out, so when you want to complain to your IT admin why they haven't done this, your Azure Stack Cloud admin, they need to go through a process of initiating an OAuth token flow. So in Azure, we've done that already. So we've gone out to the source control providers, so to GitHub, Dropbox, OneDrive, and we've said, we've got our application. We want you to enable us to request permission to go to a user's repo. In Azure Stack, we don't do that because it's not us running the infrastructure. We've got a series of steps that your admin needs to do to enable this. And as soon as they do, these become available to you guys. So if you find one that you want to use is not enabled, as long as it's within the management policy, etc., then you'll be able to use it. So I've pre-configured GitHub and local Git and external repository. We don't actually do direct authentication because it's locally on your machine or it's to a public endpoint outside. But this one, I'm going to go to GitHub and I'm going to do the authentication flow. So now I am the user. I am you guys. I am authenticating into my account. Not the application, my account. So let's use. Still show the same thing. I'm just not going to go through the GitHub or token flow. So here I'm using external repository, which is not authenticated because it's a public endpoint, but it'll give you the same idea of what we're doing. So I can choose here to choose that I want to actually go to my staging branch. I'm going to go to the master branch in this instance. But I'm just going to go and deploy, and we can pull directly here with this integration from Git or Mercurial. So if I go back into deployment options now, you will see we've gone out and done the initial fetch. So we've hooked this all up, and this would be the same if you hook up GitHub, Dropbox, or OneDrive. We'll go out and do the initial pull, and we'll pull that in. If your Azure Stack is externally facing, so that services like GitHub, OneDrive, and Dropbox can reach back in, we wire up a webhook automatically. So we wire up webhooks automatically so that it says to GitHub, when you see a change, trigger this hook. And then we then go and say, we've received a notification, give us that source. so that we can have a full CI/CD pipeline directly without you needing to go and deploy build agents and that sort of thing. We can do that automatically. If your Azure Stack is completely internal, we can't do that because we've got no way of, it's not us that, we need to receive a change notification from that service to say something's happened, please go and get it. If you're using TFS on-prem, that's no problem. We're working with that team to make sure that that's capable. And if there are other source control providers that you use inside your organization that is like high value, that you wish to use, that are purely located, please send me feedback. Because then as we get to the stage where we're looking at potentially adding new features purely for the Azure Stack element, then we can look at source control providers that purely exist on-prem and see what we can do there. Because at the end of the day, if we can register, if we can do an OAuth integration or something similar, then there's no reason why we couldn't have the same flow directly. Oh, that's my other environment just dying on me. Awesome. So what that's doing now is it's basically looking at the change set information and pulling that down, and that will be deployed shortly. While that's deploying, I'm going to drill into some of the other features that we have in the platform. So you've got your traditional app settings. If you're bringing PHP, Node, etc. applications onto the platform, you will find this element useful, and we generate config files to have that consistent. So we can change PHP versions at the drop of a hat. We can change the framework versions, Python, whether we enable sockets. Again, sockets is something that your admin can decide to turn on or turn off. ARR affinity is important. So if you've got a distributed app and you want it to be, you are not stateful, so that you want to increase your load and you don't mind which worker you go to. So if you've got multiple workers you're deployed to, ARR affinity will tie you to the same worker every time. So we basically write a cookie with the request, and it says this request came and was served by this server, which is important in stateful apps, because if your state's on that individual server, then, but truly the way to build cloud applications for high scale is to make sure that your state is managed out of process, it's out of the individual instance. And then you can take off that check and we will just route you across all the workers that you're deployed onto, and you'll get much more throughput and much more high scale. I know where I wanted to show you this. So when we talked about slots, you'll see here that we have this setting called a slot setting. This is important when you're working with multiple slots. If you mark that checkbox as a slot setting, when we do the swap of the slot, we won't move that setting with it. So this is critical in things like connection strings. So in your staging slot, you may be working with a staging dev test database with a set of data that you don't want to be swapped over. If you don't mark that, we will move the connection string across to your master slot, your production slot. So therefore, you're going to have your production app pointing at your dev database, that sort of thing. So that's something that's critical. Other things, when you integrate with third-party authentication providers, say Facebook, Google, etc., you may want to have separate app registrations. So again, your keys are going to be different. So that's a valuable thing. Authentication and authorization, this is our Easy Auth feature. And this enables you to be able to hook up authentication through a few clicks, a turnkey solution to AAD, Facebook, Google, Twitter, etc., and off you go. So again, increasing your development velocity. We are working on adding ADFS to that as well to enable that to be quick. You can do it all manually, but we're trying to make that really simple for you and not have to focus on that when you're doing your app dev. We can do that for you. Backups. You can configure your backup to go. In Azure Stack, we've brought the capability of being able to use Azure Storage accounts for your backup or Azure Stack storage accounts. So you can do either or the other. So you can burst out your backups off-site immediately and then bring them in. And you can do schedule backup. Scale up and scale out. So we have horizontal and vertical scaling. You can scale up to a larger instance, to a larger plan, or you can scale out to more workers. So you can do both. The one thing that we can't currently do today is auto-scale in Azure Stack. So if you've used our public cloud service, you know that you can set up auto-scale rules, and we'll burst you as far as we can inside a region, and then after that, we guide you to deploy your application into multiple regions and take advantage of the same capabilities. In Azure Stack today, we can't do auto-scale. We rely on a foundational piece of the fabric in Azure, and that's not quite there yet on Azure Stack. It will come over time. The VMs are in the same situation as us, so when that feature comes, we will light it up, and then you guys can take advantage of that in the private cloud as well. So let's go back to the app. It should be deployed by now. So there we go. The application is just it's not the most graphically appealing application in the world, but it's a great way of exercising our platform. So if it's something you want to play with, then feel free to download that and integrate. It gives you a way of spinning up some of our services where we have for application monitoring, producing logs, looking at data back. It's a nice application that covers a lot of things. Okay, and then we have web job capabilities. We have our Kudu tools, which is our advanced dev. I've got a demo in a little while where we're going to spin up some logs, so we'll go and have a look at those through Kudu. And that is an awesome set of tools that you just get out of the box. Let's go back to the deck. So the key message as well is that it's just another location. So in terms of when you're doing your development, whether you're working in the public cloud, whether you're working in, if you've got access to FedRAMP environments, whether you've got access to national clouds in Germany, for example, or in China, it's just another location as far as we're concerned. The consistent experience is there, the tooling experience is there. When you choose to deploy, it's just, where am I deploying this to? And I think this speaks to the value prop of Azure Stack. Certainly from our point of view, so we've got data centers around the globe and they're growing at a rapid rate. But then if you think about all the service providers in the world, think about back home in England, we had the likes of BT, Orange, etc. And up in we've got AT&T, T-Mobile, and then in Canada, like Rogers, etc. If they were to be interested in Azure Stack, then it suddenly makes the Azure locations that you can deploy onto even wider. And then if you think about all the enterprises we have in the world, thousands and thousands and thousands of them, and suddenly we've pretty much got Azure everywhere, so everybody's happy, right? So it's just another deployment location. So let's drill into what that means. So let's go to this one, and I'm going to dive into Visual Studio. Sorry. So in VS 2017, this is just an empty MVC app because I'm not really focused on the application itself. I'm more focusing on what we actually want to do when it comes to publish. So we've worked with the dev team to make sure that this experience is integrated. So you go to publish to Microsoft App Service, and it doesn't matter whether it's on Azure Stack or whether it's in the public cloud, both will work. So you log in and you add your account, your tenant account, into this environment, and then we go off and get your subscription. Now this can, word of caution, it can be quite slow to pull in the subscription, dependent on the traversal, and we are constantly working on making sure that that API is even faster. It's an API that we implemented, but that VS integrates with once they do a discovery of the Azure Stack instance. So we'll just wait for that to come up. And if this doesn't come up immediately, we're just going to dive straight into a CLI demo to show that the Azure CLI that we have is also compatible, and it will also give us the same capabilities. Yeah, it's still working. Okay. So I am going to do Azure Group, create, name my Orlando demos, and location is just going to be local. So that's provisioned me a resource group into my deployment, and we're now going to go and create a web app. And I need to give it the information of a plan. So I've got a plan that I pre-created, and I'm going to use that one. Why didn't you tell me I didn't have it right? It's an easy, quick win to make me look stupid. Come on. Keep me honest. Right. Let's change that. There we go. Now, it's not the tooling that got me down, it's me making a mistake there. Third or fourth time's a charm, right? There we go. That's deployed me a web app, and all I did was change my location. If I'd used the same command and logged into an Azure subscription, then I could have chose West US 2, North Europe, wherever I like. But the key thing is, I haven't had to go and get a specific version of tools. I've gone and gotten the same Azure CLI that we publish publicly for Azure, and off I go. And if I take it another level, I can add some logging out to that one. So it was my Orlando demo app. Yeah, and resource group was Orlando 1, and we're just going to put application logging true, and we're going to put web server logging on. Live code demos, don't do them. So what that's done is it's gone and taken my application and just updated it so that I get my config straight out into the file system, which means then I can go and view it directly. So let's go and kick this site a few times. Right. And then if I go to the integrated experience that we have inside the portal, and that one, and I did say we'd come back to Kudu. We're going to do that now. So Kudu's our advanced tools. This gives you the ability to drill into processes, see what's running directly into the application, look at environment variables, all the capabilities that you... Traditionally, for a lot of customers, they would want to directly get into the instance. With a PaaS service, you can't do that. We abstract that away. We don't give you the access into the environment directly. This gives you a level of environment access that I think is unparalleled on a PaaS service, which gives you ability to get right deep into that. So let's go to, come on, why have I not got any log files? I can drill into each individual one of my files. I can see the information that's coming out. I can edit these or view them directly. I can see the information that's coming out into my log stream. You can, in this example, we set the logging to go into the file system, which is local to your application storage. This is why you can see it via Kudu. The other option is you can wire up logging to go to blob storage, be that in Azure Stack or be that in Azure. You can use either endpoint, and that's all integrated for you as well. But that's taking away from the fact that the main message there is that all I did was change the location of my command. Those same commands will work regardless wherever you are, and we can do the same thing with PowerShell. So I have another application example here, which this just deploys an application and hooks it straight up to Git. I'm not going to reiterate this again because I want to show you other things, but I can use the same script, change my location, and off I go. I've deployed again to another set of resources. It's just reinforcing that element of the experience is consistent, the tooling is consistent, so that you don't have to go out and learn a separate set of skills. I'm going to skip the mixed targets because it's there. API consistency. If you were to go into the public cloud portal and you've already got applications, we have an option to go and get the automation script, which gives you an ARM template which has got all of our API versions that we deploy against ARM with. You can take that script and then deploy that into App Service on Azure Stack. If I have time at the end, I'm going to come back to this demo and show it live. I can take a function app, make a couple of changes, i.e. the location and the plan, and then deploy, and everything will just work. We are working on bringing the automated script element to the Azure Stack UI. It's disabled at the moment just for some consistency issues throughout the stack, but at some point we will bring that in a future update. But again, it's another consistency story. So when you deploy your application, if you are in an organization where you're using resource manager templates and you want to have everything templatized, you want to have your infrastructure as code, your application as code, you can use the same API versions that you do in Azure as you do in Azure Stack. App Service is one of the services that is pretty much close to, if not the same, absolutely the same with Azure. So you are able to deploy and use the same capabilities and the same structure down. Azure Stack implemented this concept of a profile, which is coming throughout ARM, so that we set, when we publish a profile version, in that profile we set the versions of all the resource providers that match what the version is in Azure Stack. So I don't have a demo of it today, but I think Matt McGlynn and Anjay Ajoda may have had a demo in their session or the session to come where they use profiles in Azure, where you can target your Azure subscription to use a particular profile version and then that remaps all of the services to use the same API versions that are available in Azure Stack. So therefore, you can do true dev and test in Azure against the same API versions, the same capabilities that you will have when you go back and forth. Because we understand that Azure is always going to be light years ahead. It's always going to be ahead by for us, we're trying to get to within 3 months, but realistically, other services are going to be much further ahead. So the versions of, say, storage that you have in Azure Stack, I think it's a 2016 version, but in Azure we'll be running on a 2017 version of their API. So it's how you deal with that mismatch, what's capable, what's not capable, not taking a dependency on something that exists in public cloud that you can't then use when you come down. App Stack consistency is extremely important. So we, as a platform, we continually update. We continually update the stacks that are available to you guys to deploy applications. So things like PHP versions, Python versions, .NET versions. As soon as the new version of .NET Core comes out, everybody wants to use it. In fact, they want to use it before it's even out, but we can only move so fast. And so likewise, every time that we ship an update to App Service on Azure Stack, you will get a new slew of versions. Hands up in the room who works with Node.js a lot. Okay, so we ship a huge amount of Node versions. And that's partly one of the big things every time we do an update every 3 months is how many new versions there are of Node and NPM. My background's .NET, so I'm not completely up with Node, but I just look at the list of every new version that I ship every 3 months, and it's like, I'm glad I'm making you guys happy, because there's a huge amount that seems to go on in that world all the time. Azure Functions, we've got 7.5 minutes, and I do want to do Q&A, so we're going to have to be really quick on this one. Azure Functions is our serverless option, and it gives you the ability to process events with serverless code. And the idea is that we make composing applications exceedingly quick. And this is really, really valuable in things like disconnected environments, disconnected scenarios, which Azure Stack have been looking at, such as things like the oil and gas industry. The oil and gas industry, you have large rigs, you have large FPSOs, you have territories where network connectivity is pretty spotty. Azure Functions is a great way of detecting, oh, I've got a connection to the internet, now I can process my workload, and off I go and I can pump data back to my central repository, and now I've got connectivity, etc. So that's one of the elements that they've used for that example. You may have seen cruise ship demos, oil and gas, mining solutions, and that sort of thing. That's one where they go. You can develop functions in C#, Node.js, F#, Batch, Bash, PHP, PowerShell, and so many more. And it's really took on. And we're really excited to be able to give you guys in the enterprise the ability to run this as part of your Azure Stack deployments. We expose functions as HTTP API endpoints. And as we say on the slide, we easily integrate with Logic Apps. Logic Apps is another service that is not available on Azure Stack at this moment. But please, please, please go onto their user voice and tell them you want it. They are hearing it loud and clear, but I don't believe they have anything to announce yet. But the more customers that come with use cases and real revenue generating use cases and put it onto user voice that they need to have Logic Apps in Azure Stack, the Azure Stack team and you guys will be very, very happy. So let's just have a quick look at the numbers. We've got over 30,000 customers. We're dealing with 100,000 function apps, and we deal with over 1 billion executions just on those function apps every single day. It's a fantastic platform, a fantastic way for you to do very quick agile dev. It's a simple programming model. Functions a single unit of work, and they're executed based on a trigger, based on something happening, based on something like a request comes in, or an item goes into a blob storage queue, or it goes into various different triggers that we have. Some you will be able to use directly within Azure Stack because we have the services. So blob storage, tables, queues, etc. you can trigger. Others you can trigger from external if your Stack's external, etc. like that. Others you can poll for, and you can wait for the output. We have integrations for outputs and inputs that you can make use of, and we develop the functions runtime at a very rapid rate, and it's updating on probably, I think it's every 2 weeks it gets updated. So every time, again, you get an update to App Service, you will get a nice new update of functions. Let's dive straight in to my environment. And I want to do a very, very quick demo of functions. Again, the tooling inside VS is consistent once again. What am I on? Oh, 140. I want to be on 133. So you'll see here we have a very different, if you've never played with functions before, please go to tryfunctions.azure.com and go and have a look. You don't need a credit card to sign up. You can go and explore and have a look at functions. And some of my colleagues have got some fantastic sessions this week as well to give you more detail into what we have in the public cloud. But I've got an example here of just a basic trigger. We have a great dev environment directly inside the portal, and this is in, we bring this directly into the Azure Stack product as well. So you can get up and running and off we go. So let's go and have a look. This function is just a HTTP trigger. It's written in JavaScript, and I can just run this directly. I'm passing in a variable of Orlando, and immediately I get there we go. I get an output. The information's logged out, and we've got log information. You've got the management and the monitoring of the serverless executions. In Azure Stack, we deploy functions code in 2 modes. Consumption plan, which is where you pay per execution or memory usage buckets, or you can run in the traditional app service plan. So if you've got an app service plan where you've got a load of apps and you're paying for that instance, you can decide to run your function apps inside that same instance if you wish to. 2 different models. Same analogous with what we have in public cloud. You can do exactly the same. So, getting close to wrapping up. If you have feedback generally on the Azure Stack product, please send them the feedback directly through that URL. I work very closely with the Azure Stack engineering team. I probably meet with them 3 to 4 times a week and are regularly exchanging with them. So if you wish, you can come direct to me, but otherwise go straight direct to them. And the main thing to get going with Azure Stack and App Service on Azure Stack is to get hold of the POC and get it up and running. But meanwhile, develop your applications in Azure. You don't need to change that. And then validate them by deploying onto a single node POC and then deploy onto the integrated solution. There is an Azure Stack customer immersion session. It's in the Hyatt. And if you want to pass to that, there's limited passes. On the Azure Stack booth downstairs in the expo hall, you can come along and pick those up. And again, they have a hands-on experience to do a lab as well. Unfortunately, the lab doesn't have App Service deployed on it. We ran into a couple of issues, which meant that we couldn't do that for Ignite, but we're working on doing that globally so that post this event, then we can make that available as a tool as well. Related content, yeah, the font size is pretty small on there, but we're about a third of the way through the week, and there's still lots to come if you're interested in Azure Stack generally. I have got a session straight after this downstairs, so I will take some Q&A when we finish, but I will have to probably limit it to 10 minutes so I can get downstairs, get set up, and then present for my next session. But the next session's on about managing. So if you are the IT pro, the cloud operator, then that's a valuable session. If you want to understand the nuts and bolts of what goes underneath the app service product, that's what I'm going to go into. Please evaluate this session. Evaluations are very, very useful, especially the comment boxes, extremely valuable. So please do that. So just to drive home the message, the tooling, the experience is consistent. It always must be consistent. If you find an experience that is not consistent, please call us out on it, because then we are failing in our goal to deliver to you as customers. The App Service platform is a fantastic platform to develop apps on it, and it's the same for hybrid. Whether your resources are all in the cloud, whether they're on-prem or whether it's a mixture, you can go back and forth, you can use data from wherever in the place in the world or inside your organization. We're excited to bring the capabilities to organizations and to service providers who operate in regions that we don't hit. So please go and have a look at the product, go and have a look at the POC, but also take a look at us in the public cloud. Because we find there are less and less reasons for some customers to have to choose to go private all the time. They can get extreme value out of the public cloud and the private cloud in combination. Thank you for your time. Thank you for putting up with a couple of demo fails. It's early in the morning, so thank you very much. And if you've got some questions, I'll take them now.